So welcome to the IM Tech Meetup. It's sponsored by Kontent.ai. So we'll get started. Excuse me, today I'm full of cold and everything, so I will be sniffling through whatever I'm trying to say. But this IM Tech Meetup today is about the AI, the journey so far. So we've all probably been touched by AI at the start of the year or even before that, but it's really sort of, kicked in a lot more and impacted a lot of people. Not to, mention the stuff that's happening with the OpenAI stuff even right now, with their CEO and their team as well. So lots of impacting stuff. So we've got awesome speakers today that will obviously address quite a few of those AI stories that you've had in the past, but also what can be done now and going in the future as well. So yeah, just a little bit about who I am. So my name's Ilesh Mistry. I am a senior front-end engineer for MMT Digital, and I am a Kontent.ai MVP. Should you want to try and contact me or reach out to me, you can use the QR code on the right-hand side. A little bit about the IM Tech Meetup. So I try and focus them around my specialist, which is front-end topics, but they tend to kind of go around different topics as well, because I try and pick up topics that are more community-driven and community sort of requested. So you'll find different topics down then as well. From myself, if you follow me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, you'll hear about more future meetups and trying to get involved. And if you want to talk at meetups or know somebody that wants to do it, or even wants to sponsor the event, by all means, get in touch and I'll be happy to kind of speak to you about it. So a little bit about our sponsor, Kontent.ai. So they're a headless CMS that enables organizations to do lots of governing of content and pushing of content onto different channels. There's some QR codes on the right-hand side. Please check them out. And they've got a community sort of Discord area as well. That's quite useful to kind of tune into as well. As with majority of the companies these days, they are recruiting. So, if you're looking to shift a new career, obviously with the new year coming as well, new start, check their career pages out as well. So just a bit more about the event. So before we get started, obviously, we're going to have 3 speakers today, but please add your questions in the chat. And at the end of each session, we'll have almost a questions area for that, for them to kind of answer any of your questions. And sessions recorded, as you're probably already aware. So should you need to kind of drop off at any point, I'll be sharing the recording later, either later on today or hopefully tomorrow. If it would be really appreciated if you can share this online, so on social media, tweets, LinkedIn posts, whatever, and that'll be ace. And then if you want to kind of win some swag, here's a QR code to kind of win some funky hoodie and a bottle, which I will be constantly drinking from during the event. To kind of promote that a bit more. And I'll be sharing those links throughout the talks anyway, so don't worry if you can't get that right now. Cool. So what we're all here for is obviously to hear from these amazing speakers. So today's agenda is going to be Martin, who's going to kick us off, who's going to be talking about the AI adoption and the reality check that we need to kind of look at. Then we've got Brian, who's going to be talking about how to use your own data with AI. So that's going to be really useful, because obviously data is so important to kind of keep within your constraints and not really expose too much out. And then Michael will kick us, finish us off with no UI, no problems. So how AI can simplify our lives, really. So awesome topics. Like I mentioned, keep your questions either in the chat or to the end, and then we can start sort of going through those as well at the end. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to pass over to Martin. Just let us know when you're ready, and then we can get started.
So thank you, Ilesh. Let me just share my screen. And let me try. this. Can you guys actually see what I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, hello everyone. My name is Martin Michalik. I am the VP of Product at Kontent.ai, and today I want to talk about the AI adoption. And actually, today I wanted to talk about the reality. So, AI, it's been almost a year, maybe a little bit more, since the major breakthrough news of ChatGPT. So, it's been a year. And I want to talk about what is the reality. Everyone is talking about AI. Everyone is posting, especially after this weekend and the situation at OpenAI offices. But what is the reality in the usage and adoption? What is the reality in capabilities that different vendors are building and how they are actually integrating these new services? So that's what I'm trying to cover today. And I will also talk about the challenges connected to this adoption. So today I'm gonna share three main challenges, but I'm also gonna provide you some tips how to overcome them. So let's get to it. Honestly, so what is the reality? Well, the reality is that AI is here really to stay. And if you still thought that we might go back to the days where AI was not a thing, I don't think that's gonna be a reality. Maybe that's a bad news for you, but really, AI is here to stay. And the reason why I'm so certain about this is that 2 weeks ago I was at Gartner Expo, IT Symposium in Barcelona, which is likely the biggest IT expo you can attend in Europe. And what you see on the picture are booths from roughly 130, 140 vendors from different areas. So different industries. So you see companies like GitHub. There's maybe Postman that you can see, but you also see tools focused on automation. You see tools focused on BI. Back there, you will also see Kontent.ai. The reality was that every single one of these vendors had some AI capabilities in their product now. Um, and everyone, the whole conference was about AI. Everyone was talking about it. So AI is really here to stay, and I'm not surprised. The potential AI has is really transformative. And one quote that I often like to mention is one of the attendees of another event where we had a session as well told me, she told me, Martin, I'm really sold on AI because what used to take us 3 weeks, we're now able to do within 2 days thanks to ChatGPT, Midjourney, and Photoshop. She was talking about the content that they are producing in their marketing department. And she told me that they're now able to really get the first version of the draft of content that they want to use in their campaign in 10% of the time than they used to. And so she was really sold. She was very excited about it. And in general, that's a lot of sentiment that you hear about AI. It's so awesome. It's so transformative. It's so amazing. It's going to change the world, and we will just all relax on the beach and drink margaritas, right? So the question now is, if AI is so great, everyone is really using it, right? Well, the reality is that at the same event, you get questions like this. So, Martin, how do I convince my colleagues that we should start using tools like what you're showing us? How we should get into the world of AI? Or what is the business use case for this functionality? What is the business use case for tools such as Midjourney or DALL-E to generate images? What is the use case for ChatGPT in my marketing tech stack? It can just write mediocre content, right? So these are the questions that really show that while there is a lot of excitement about AI, the adoption is actually struggling a bit. And there are different reasons for it, and I want to talk about three that I've identified. And they are from completely different areas of the adoption. So the first one actually is that using AI is actually not easy to get real decent results that can be used in business settings. So I want to demonstrate. If you think about using ChatGPT to produce content for your commerce website, you need to really nail down the queries that you're gonna and the prompts that you're gonna use. You can see here the difference. In one query, I'm just asking ChatGPT, "Hey, generate me content for our e-commerce website about fair trade coffee," and I get very bad answer. In the other one, I'm more specific. I'm asking about the journey of the beans, how they get from the farmers to our table, and you see that I'm already getting some results. But I still haven't specified any personas, any tone of voice, any brand guidelines, or formatting. And all these inputs that are then added to that prompt will help me to get better results. And the reality is that you really need to nail down that prompt engineering today if you want to use the raw ChatGPT to get some decent results. The challenge is becoming much more obvious when we start talking about images. So the image that you see on the slide was actually generated by Midjourney. And I would say it's pretty realistic and quite good, actually. But if you check the prompt that is on top of the picture, well, that's completely different discussion than the prompts before, right? So you not only have to describe pretty well what you're trying to generate, but you also need to understand some basic concept of photography or lighting, because you want to specify that in that generation. Actually, Midjourney can take all these parameters in, and you get wildly different results when you specify these parameters or when you don't. So using AI can be quite challenging, and honestly, getting good results for business use cases is not super easy. However, when you do nail down the basics of prompt engineering, it really gets more interesting. So in order to deal with this first challenge of adoption, I really recommend you to get some at least basic prompt engineering training for you or for your team, and really make sure that you understand how the engines are behaving, understand the specifics of the tools that you're using, because eventually AI is not going to steal your job, but the people who will know how to use AI, they are going to take your jobs. So that is the first challenge that many organizations face and many people trying to get in that usage of AI. The second challenge is that many tools just scratch the surface of what is possible to actually achieve. And what we're seeing these days is something I would call more of a standardization of functionality. You see today something that's getting quite close to standard functionality similar to rich text editor. Most of the tools today that are implementing some form of AI capabilities, they focus on content generation or content summarization and really focus on that first obvious use case. Give me a summary or generate something for me. Now, honestly, when I showed you the picture of those 140 vendors, almost every single one of them had similar capability. So we are really seeing that there is this weird standardization, similar, as I really mentioned, to the rich text editor, where you have the standard feature set of bold, italics, strike through, or styling such as code. And honestly, I'm calling it today. In a couple of months, you will get their functionality to summarize or generate text. It's coming. So the question is really, what is the real value of the AI in the tools that you are using? And honestly, I feel we are in for a bit of disappointment, because honestly, we are riding the hype cycle right now. And we are past the innovation trigger, and we are now in the phase of inflated expectations. We are here. And we will see that many of these tools either don't think enough of other applications of the AI, or they just don't have any. And because the generative AI is not a silver bullet to all of your problems, honestly. And many tools, many vendors actually position like that it's gonna solve everything. It's not the case. There are some industries where it can have transformative potential, massive potential, but there are some industries where you cannot really do much with it, honestly. So there's going to be a lot of disillusionment coming, but eventually we'll get to the productivity plateau. It's going to be different for different tools, different industries, but we're still going to see. And the vendors that are going to be leading, that are going to be innovative and creative, they are the ones that will dominate, that they will be searching for new use cases, how AI can be applied to other steps of the workflow that you do in their tools. What is also going to be interesting to see really is how the technology is going to evolve and how much more we are going to be able to do, how many new use cases will we be able to cover. Because honestly, the technology so far was evolving quite rapidly. This is a screenshot I took 2 weeks ago when there was this dev day of OpenAI, where some of the media called it an extinction event for certain startups. Because honestly, some of the tools were just wrapping the functionality and building on top of what ChatGPT was doing. And with the next update, it all became irrelevant because it became so much powerful. And we will see this evolution continue. So what you can do with this, how to overcome this challenge to really find out what is the value for you. You really need to look out what are the tools that are creating some added value. Think about the use cases that you have in your organization or in the work that you do, and look at the tools that you are using and what is the functionality. And think about whether they're just providing the first obvious use case or whether these tools actually have something more to offer, whether they have maybe a roadmap for AI functionality, whether they might have some unique use cases covered or some specific workflow steps in a workflow that you wouldn't think that AI could help with. So really pick the tools that you're using that offer something more. And the third challenge that I want to talk about is related to security, because honestly, with many tools today in your stack, you have no guarantees what happens to your data if you use the AI functionality. And the fear is real. A couple months ago, you could see articles like this that some major companies were completely banning use of any AI technology. And those companies were hit by serious scandals. And honestly, when we were at that Gartner Expo, where the audience was really technical, there was a lot of CIOs, a lot of CDOs there. One of their first questions were always around how is it implemented, what happens to my data, and how we can make sure that it's going to stay safe. So really, when you are choosing the tools that you are implementing in your workflow, really think about what are the guarantees that you're getting from the vendors about how the data is processed, whether it's used for further model learning or whether it just stays sandboxed in your environment and never leaves, because it's might not be a big deal now, but it's going to be a big deal later down the road when the models are going to be more advanced, and maybe it's going to be even easier to mine the data out of it. We will see a lot of regulations first, but also a lot of I would call it security concerns and being addressed because we really don't know what is happening in the background with your data. So those were the challenges. Now, what can vendors do to help with these challenges and what we are trying to do? And I want to talk a bit how we are trying to build the value, to maybe give you also inspiration what you can do in your companies, or maybe to what to search for when you are evaluating different tools. So I mentioned that one of the challenges is really how you help with the usage of the AI in the organization, because many users don't know how to do it. So what if the prompt was already prepared for you? What if you only had to go and select something from the menu when you are working on that let's say piece of content? And what if the system was already prepare that it's going to preserve all the work that you've done, all the formatting, and all the structure? Because if you want to use the ChatGPT raw, and if you insert the prompt there, even if you insert some content there, you will just lose it. So one of the ways is to really prepare and pre-prompt the model and the system so the user doesn't lose it and can use it on demand when they are working on that content. The other option is to apply the style automatically, so they don't even have to choose. They can already use what they have in their inventory, whether that's content or whether that's code or whether that's some assets. Think, how can you streamline the work of the users that they need to do to, again, feed the tools the information. Think about what could be automated and what could be completely streamlined. And maybe you will find out that some of the prompts are not even needed, that some of the functionality can just happen and the user can be informed about it. For example, you can categorize the images for them, and then you can use the tags to power the search or whatever are the use cases that you might do. Or you will help them organize, let's say, your inventory where you have the files of the project that you're working on, and things like that. Or eventually, what if you can build something directly in the editorial experience, something that's more conversional, that you can really tell the assistant to do something and it's going to happen for you whenever you need it. So that is the ultimate experience towards which we are all heading. This is also what Microsoft is teasing a bit more. We are heading more towards the future of conversational interfaces, where you just ask for something and you'll get something in return. But you have to remember one thing: AI is technology, and technology on its own is not enough, because AI is no different from other tools, and it's not the tool that really matters. It's the how you build with it. It's the value that you are creating with it. If you're just focusing on how to use the technology without the goal, without the purpose, you will not get ahead. And there are some companies that do realize that and realize it very well. And my favorite company that I often share on LinkedIn about is actually, quite surprising, Coca-Cola. Because honestly, Coca-Cola today is leading the game of using generative AI in their marketing. What you can see on the slide is a campaign, few months old actually, and you see two different campaigns. One is the Coca-Cola Masterpiece, where they used different technologies. They used AI, they used visual effects, and then used some animation, and they created an amazing campaign when they are bringing to life classical art pieces. They're animated and they're passing the Coca-Cola bottle. So you see the Coca-Cola bottle merging in and out of these famous art pieces. But what they also did, they created their first drink with the AI. So what they did, they paired different flavor preferences with the data they have, and they created their first drink. And the whole campaign was built in different AI tools. It was quite successful. It was Y3000 limited edition. But it was not only that. And actually, right now, if you go to their profiles, they are launching a new campaign. And there was one from, I think, last month, where you were able to create your own greeting cards. They did this for this holiday. They're also building one for Christmas right now. And they're really incorporating this to their workflow on everyday basis. This is what they do with the money and time they saved using AI. And this is how they are using the biggest benefit of AI. They're using the really democratized creativity, and they are involving their customers to do that. They're involving all these images you see were generated by their customers with the tools that they prepared for it. So if you want to uh, really have an inspiring company to follow, I definitely recommend following Coca-Cola, because what they're doing is really amazing. I could also name Heinz, for example, another great example, but more and more companies will start to realize what can be really achieved, and then those questions about what is the business use case, how it can be used, will just fade away. So I want to wrap things up. I really believe that AI is here to stay, and you really see some of the companies, really like Coca-Cola, leading the game. But there are still some challenges that needs to be solved along the way. They are more and more being addressed. It will take a bit more time with some of the companies, but eventually, um, the vendors that will realize that soonest will lead the game. They will provide very seamless interfaces for the clients that I believe in a couple of months, even the advanced knowledge of prompts won't be that necessary. It's still going to give you an edge, but for the basic task, it won't be necessary, and you will start seeing the added value. So stay tuned, fasten your seat belts. We're just starting. It's gonna be an amazing ride, and I can't wait what is coming out of this, and I believe it's going to be fantastic. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much, and I'm passing the word back to the studio.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Do we have any questions for Martin? If not, I can probably think of one. So those three sort of key areas that you focused on, Martin, do you feel that those are sort of like the three major ones, or do you feel like there's other things coming in and that could be sort of part of that? And then also, I guess the graph that you had, was that one of yours, or did you find that in the market research and stuff?
So okay, I'm gonna try answer those things. So I really believe that these questions are these concerns are or blockers are the major ones. It's what you see published by different analyst groups. Definitely the security concerns. But it's also what we really are seeing among our clients and among the partners we work with, that you see sometimes people struggling with realizing what is the value, how we can use it, or we already know it's important, but my team is not technical, because honestly, we have to realize that even in this call, we are very likely all familiar with the AI because we are in this tech bubble, and it's very exciting for us. But it's not a common thing in the general population. People still are fearful of what AI is and what it can do. So we need to show them it's not black magic, and that you can actually get some great results out of this. But it will take time. It will take time, and that's why I also showed you the chart, because this is also something that is shared by different analyst groups, that we are at the peak of hype, and now we will really see where the value is going to be. And we also see many people just ditching that, but it's the same with different any other technology. I remember the early days of cloud, and I believe you, Ilesh, and Brian as well. People were quite skeptical about cloud, and yes, there are still people that are skeptical about cloud, but what is the percentage of the population today and 5 years ago, 10 years ago? It was completely different ratio, and the same thing is going to happen here. We're now seeing people that are overly hyped, maybe don't know what to really do because it's fascinating technology. We'll see a drop where people will face the disillusionment that maybe it's not solving all the problems they thought. But eventually, there will be that plateau of productivity. We'll see tools really helping you out in your daily tasks, and it's going to be everywhere.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Ash, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Ilesh and Martin. The one tool that I'm using at work right now within Teams right now, like if we had a whole transcript of notes right now and just asked it to summarize it, it would come back. There are times where it doesn't do it as efficiently as we want. Are we at the point where we can just say, or if the AI tool is not understanding, if it can just come back to us and say, I'm not sure, can you elaborate further? Or is this the structure you want or something like, or if I was to basically counter change it, no, that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for something more like this. Are we at that point yet? Because with this tool, I'm not kind of seeing that. It's using DPI.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. I feel we need a bit more horsepower in those models that are powering these tools. But the differences between the different generations of these models are massive. If you think about what GPT-3 could do and then GPT 3.5 could do, it was a massive difference. The same if you compare GPT 3.5 to 4, it's a completely different conversation. And what we are really seeing and why it's so exciting, we see that it's speeding up and the models are getting better and better. Now, what is going to be interesting to see how different vendors are going to use this technology, because now it's really about the creativity on the side of the vendors to really find the use cases that go beyond just, as you mentioned, just summarizing that, but maybe I've actually seen a tool that was able to generate takeaways and in a structured way from a sales pitch, for example, when you're doing a sales pitch to a prospect, that it can create quite interesting note. But now is the time where different companies need to think about what we can do with this technology. What is the potential? And what is the value we want to create? Because honestly,
the reason why I brought this up was really I work closely with stakeholders.
Yeah,
can be very impatient, as you know. If you introduce this as a first off right now, they'll be like, okay, that's good, but we want more. They basically, if I was to put it in a milder tone, that they want that human element kind of replaced. That like, all right, I hit this button, this should happen, but you and I both know that that's not going to happen overnight or even in the next year or two.
Yeah.
This is just something that I would like to kind of address in that, having this impatience is not going to make it happen quick or anything. It's going to take time. I was just trying to get your insight on like, how far do you think we are from there, really?
I think it's honestly months from what we're seeing, and maybe Michael can tell us a bit more. But you see, Microsoft is really betting on that Copilot functionality, which is essentially what you're telling. Like you have an assistant that is able to work with different resources that's available to get the results that you want. So I don't think we're that far. It's just a matter of time, and it's a matter of how different vendors will get on the same speed with what is happening with the tech.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that insight.
Yeah, I think Michael, were you going to?
I was going to say I've got a video about Microsoft 365 Copilot in my bit, and it might cover actually some of what you're asking and wanting to know there. When you're talking about the transcription in Teams right now, is that using Teams Premium or Microsoft 365 Copilot, or is it something else that's doing the AI element of the transcription?
It's something else.
Cool.
And it's very early stages. Like I said, right now they're just in the simple, because before it was a case of record the meeting, get the transcript. Yeah, basically sit there for 3-4 hours, maybe longer, and pick out the key points and everything, which is very tedious, especially
within Teams with the Microsoft 365 Copilot and the Sales Copilot. There's some really, really good stuff that I think is along those lines. I don't have videos of the Sales Copilot, but it's worth looking at videos for them. That really, I find it amazing. It works with Dynamics and Salesforce and is actually designed to work across different CRMs. It's not just for Dynamics. The point of that kind of from a stakeholder perspective, but also from that kind of customer call perspective, you might be talking with someone, a prospective customer. It will capture the insights. It will give you the background to conversations, and it will understand the objective that you're trying to do, the deal that you're trying to close, and how to progress it. So it's not just a raw taking the transcription, it's getting data from elsewhere. With that talk, I don't want to talk too much about where data might come from, because I'm aware that Brian might be covering that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Michael.
Cool. Great question, Ash. So there's one question in the chat, Martin, which is to do with what are some of the B2B examples of AI RAG in particular?
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but it really depends on the tools that you're using, and yeah, the examples were shown B2C. So you mean the examples of the campaigns? Yeah. So I think in B2B it's slightly different, right? And it really depends on, and what I will give the example of what we're trying to do with Kontent.ai. So when you think about the content production process, it's in some organizations quite a lengthy process, because if you think about companies such as airlines, they have oftentimes dozens of websites. They have complex process because they operate in different countries with different localization requirements, with different languages. So a certain piece of content, it really can take up to weeks, sometimes even months, to get produced and published, because you want to make sure the brand guidelines are followed and everything. There are different steps that can be improved with AI. So the first obvious one is really helping to draft that content and create that content, maybe assets, etc. But for example, I mentioned localization and translation. This is actually another area where AI really excels. Or it can help with let's say repurposing of the content, because if you are able to, when you are creating the content, also get suggestions that this was already created, or you have something very similar in your content inventory, or if you are able to automatically create taxonomies for that piece of content, or what if you have a Copilot that helps you write a migration, because you're migrating from a different tool, and the Copilot is able to access, let's say, the APIs of both these tools and help you write the migration. So those I would call it, I don't even call it micro gains, because those gains are massive, but those are the small individual steps in the journey that when you combine and you do the sum across all of them, you will get massive gains. So I believe in B2B settings, these gains are going to be more internal facing, and you will still see them in the efficiency of the teams, rather than such what Coca-Cola is doing, because Coca-Cola have the advantage of massive audience, so they can really capture that audience. In B2B, oftentimes the audience is rather focused, and you need to be very precise there. But again, if you want to be in, what's very common in B2B is personalization, and I can help you with that, because you are able to, first of all, create the experiences faster, because you are just creating variations of the content, but you can also have different tools helping you analyze the data and maybe automatically even deploying the different variants to your audience.
If there's time, I can maybe add some other examples from a B2B scenario. So obviously, a lot of the generative AI and the LLM examples that we have, they are quite kind of end customer facing, quite business to consumer facing, because it's all about natural language. Where that can be quite powerful from a business to business relationship, though, could be that there's a business that has a wealth of data around a particular industry or customer type or something. They want more insights from that. How can they use AI? Now, it could be that there are some AI companies out there that are tailoring these language models in a way that can produce insights around a particular industry's data sets. And then they can actually provide industry insights about that using the natural language that is available to us. And it could be that that business is curating those types of prompts, or it could be that they're providing a service that the end business gets to question. There's examples around customer service, and Martin, you touched on there, and that personalization. That is a massive one, right? There could be some real big business to business opportunities around being able to take customer data and return it back into segments and whatever else. Yes, businesses will be able to do that themselves, but there's definitely opportunities that others will be able to do that at scale using AI to gain those new insights. Some of that is not new. I mean, machine learning has been very good at doing segmentation, but again, how can we segment based on natural language? How could the customer themselves even get that bespoke, personalized experience? And then there's actually, how can businesses improve their own operational processes? How can they make efficiencies from the data and processes that they have? I mean, Microsoft 365 Copilot is a fantastic example of something that is there to improve the efficiency of a business. Yes, an end customer is using it, but it's to make the business more efficient as a B2B offering. I'm sure at some point there will be a consumer version, but not yet. There's so many different ways, and it's not always going to be about that UI element, that front end bit. That how do we ground some of the LLMs in the background to and configure prompts that just automatically run against data streams as they're coming in? That's not really been looked at very much. We haven't got many examples of them in the public domain, right? But there are definitely all these things being considered.
Yeah, I just wanted to really emphasize what Michael was just saying. People today really, when they talk about AI, they really think only about the generative AI, but there's much more to AI than just Gen AI, right? If you go to Hugging Face or any similar site, you will see many of the specialized models that are there that might be could be probably very relevant to your product into B2B models that are focused on machinery or things like that, or algorithms that really help you to analyze streams of data. And in overall, the whole AI market is right now experiencing a boom because of the hype that Gen AI is generating. So a lot of these specialized companies are also getting money and investment, so they are able to advance their technology. So when thinking about AI, don't focus just on generative AI and ChatGPT. There's so much more to explore out there than just Gen AI.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think why Gen AI is such an impressive technology is generally, for as long as computers have existed, the way that we get to work with computers is in the computer language, right? And there's been whole industries around the good UX, good UI to make interfacing with computers easier for humans. But this is kind of the first time that computers actually understand our own language. And that's the key thing, right? So if it's that, it's often at the interface layer between the human and the computer. What then goes on behind the scenes is it's going to run probably some more traditional machine learning, probably getting at some point down to just an Excel file, right? That's a lot of what AI might be, is an Excel file running in the background. But actually the generative piece, the understanding of what we're trying to do from a natural language perspective, that is so empowering, because if the machine understands what we want it to do, it can go and write a SQL query. It can go and write a bit of code. It can go and write us a document, a presentation, whatever it is that we need. And that ultimately will be using some AI elsewhere. It could be that we want to do a translation. Could be that we want to do form detection, facial recognition, all of this stuff. They are traditional AIs that have been around for a number of years. But it's just that now, to me, it's democratizing a lot of this quite complex, quite complicated, quite a steep barrier to entry for some of this stuff. It's actually making that so much easier for people to harness and use as they want, because they can just describe what they want. And without getting too much into my talk later, I thought I would just share that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. That's brilliant. Any other questions before we move on to the next session? If not, we've still obviously got plenty of time to kind of ask your questions during the next session as well. So thank you, Martin. Really appreciate it. And thanks, obviously, for the rest of the people that answered and provided the questions. Brian, let us know when you're ready and we can start your session.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works. It's trying anyways.
Yeah.
Can you see it? All right. Fantastic. So first, just want to thank Ilesh for having me in the meetup. This is a topic that is very interesting to me. I'm working with it for about as long as it's come out. And there's so many ways that we could take it. I mean, Ilesh first said, "Hey, can you join us and talk about AI?" And I think my first response was, "All right, do I have like 55 hours in this session or not?" Because that's how long it could take if we just say AI. So try to kind of hone in and focus the discussion a little bit about a particular tooling set that we've been using here a lot at my agency. Plus, I actually believe it's how Kontent.ai might use some things behind the scenes. So I think this is a great kind of comparison to the talk where Martin was pretty high level on some business challenges and opportunities. And I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of how some of it actually works. So I wasn't sure, I don't know how easy this is going to be, but how many developers do we have on the call right now? Maybe quick raise of hands or quick moment in chat. Are we kind of developer heavy? Or, okay, I'm seeing 4 or 5. Okay, you know, we'll say half and half. So I'll try to not like get too technical, and someone just kind of, you know, raise their hand if I get too technical. But this is a little bit of a deep dive into how some of this works, and maybe it's a technique that you can take and use with you. So we'll get right to it. We're going to talk about how to use your own data with AI. Let's see. Just a quick note about my agency. I am co-owner here at BizSteam. We've been in business for 22 years here in Grand Rapids, Michigan in the US. And we are a digital agency that does a lot of content management implementations and e-commerce sites and big enterprise B2B, B2C portals, all sorts of apps, integrations that we do. And we've been doing that for a long time. So I've actually been leading that, and I'm one of our solution architects is kind of my day job, but also do a lot of other things too. So for that, my background, I've been a developer for a long time, too long to probably actually put on a slide. But as I mentioned, the focus is around enterprise content management, and I've been recognized with a couple MVP recognitions over the years, and also Microsoft Azure MVP is one of my newer recognitions, because a lot of the work that we do at BizStream, we put into the cloud, and we use serverless technologies and use some of the most modern things that you can do. And one of those happens to be AI and search, because almost every website these days needs a good search experience. So we've been using Azure Cognitive Search for a long time. It actually just got renamed, but I'll get into that in a second. And one thing you may not know about me just from reading the profile is I'm a diehard Detroit Lions fan. And it's a big deal for us around here. I know, probably far away from you all, but it's been the last time the Lions were 8-1 at the start of the season, it was 1962. That's how long it's been since we've had a good winning team. And they play here in a couple more days, and we're very excited about that. And it's making my fall a little bit more fun than it normally is. But if you want to find out more about me, you can follow me on X at McBeeve, or you can check me out on LinkedIn. Probably saw that already if you're at this event. So enough about me. I thought I'd start the talk here. You know, we're talking about being grounded with our data around us. And of course, I put that into ChatGPT, and this is the image it came out with. I'll be honest, I reprompted it a few times to tweak a couple things. But any questions? No, just kidding. Just kidding. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to actually ground your data, which is to use your own data in your projects. And what we're going to eventually do is build something like this, or actually look at the one I have built, because we probably don't have time to build it from the ground up. But this talk is all about, if I want to make my own GPT, if I want to make my own assistant, what tools can I use? How could I do that? And, you know, the answer to that is like, there's 10 different ways to do this. So I'm actually only going to show you one way that I thought was actually kind of easy and relevant to the work that we do here at BizStream. But ultimately, we're going to build our own assistant, and it's going to end up looking like a chat bot that's like this, but it's going to connect to some of my own data. So that's the target. I thought I'd just show, like, here's where we're going with this talk, because you might ask the question, well, wait a minute, Brian, can't we just use Chat GPT? Anyone in the audience, anyone listening, maybe have a thought as to like, why, if I want to use my own data, can't I just use the public Chat GPT? Anyone? Try to make it a little interactive here. Pop quiz.
Your data will be probably.
There we go.
around
There we go.
yeah.
And yeah, Ted, you're totally right as well. So Ted had the same answer. Hallucinations, or basically inaccuracies. It's like an overconfident salesman, right? It's going to confidently answer you a question, and you may not actually really want that answer. So it's a general large language model. It doesn't have the most up-to-date information, or the most distinct information, or like the most sensitive or aware information possible. It's used a large training set, but maybe it's not trained on the actual things that you want. So it's not really a good idea to just trust it, right? You can actually get into some trouble. In fact, real world case, I think we saw that earlier in the session. We have a financial service client. It's one of the largest clients we have at BizStream. We're working for over 10 years, and they have a lot of tax, consulting, and financial advice that they give out. And they're exploring the use of a Chat GPT solution like Chat GPT for their own knowledge stores that they have, right? They have hundreds and thousands of pieces of information and documentation and legal best practices around the world, because they're a global tax provider. And they actually told me something that they told me this maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, and it kind of threw me for a loop, because we were so on the, as Martin said, on that rise up the chart of excitement around this technology. And they said, hey, BizStream, this is great and all. We think there might be some business case, but just so you know, legally, we can't actually answer any questions. So they want to be able to educate their visitors and their customers, but they can't actually have anything that just automatically says, this is the answer to your question. So there's some responsibility that has to go into these tools and technologies. And even then, maybe there's legal compliance or other reasons as to like why you actually might not even be able to use this. So they're exploring options of, can we at least point users in the right direction? Can we help them get to information faster so that they can make their own conclusions to the questions that they have? Like, what's the tax law around this specific topic, and how do I answer that? But for their organization, they would not want an assistant just say, oh yeah, check the checkbox in row 5 of your W-4 form or whatever for your taxes. They'd get in trouble for that. I mean, there's like, legal rules that just says they can't do it. So there's responsibility that has to go into this. And for the rest of my session, I'm going to talk about maybe how Microsoft can help solve some of those things, and why for them, they've taken a very thoughtful approach to using AI with your own data. That is something that they give you a level of control, a level of sovereignty around where the data lives, where it stays, and how the answers are actually shaped and formed. So they've made a whole entire website and almost like department at Microsoft around empowering responsible AI practices. And if you're curious and you want to actually read all the things they're doing, I have the link up there on the slide that, it's this whole thing is how do we keep it safe? How do we keep it secure? How do we keep it non-biased? How do we make sure it's accurate? And this is something that I was lucky enough to be at the Microsoft Ignite event last year, not this year, and they spent a lot of time explaining why responsibility in AI matters quite a bit. And we've touched on it in our scenarios here today already. But I just thought I'd call that out because what they're doing is allowing you to spin up an AI content safety resource. And this is really critical to allow you to maybe control and shape how answers come out from an assistant or a copilot. You can actually spin up a content safety resource, and you have various like categories of the types of language that you want to accept or deny. You know, whether there's anything around hate, sexual terms, self-harm, or violence, as you see here, and there's a couple other ones that they've added since. But it allows you to toggle the levels of tolerance that your assistant can work with this language or not. And it can be tailored to your use case. So, you know, I mentioned the financial service use case. They may not allow any of these. They may set all of them to no, don't accept any inputs around these categories. But we actually have another client of ours is a large healthcare system in the Midwest in the US. And they actually do want to allow sexual terms because it's all about sexual wellness and sexual health for women and other, you know, genders. So it's an interesting concept that allows you to kind of toggle the way that these assistants are created. And not too many people are aware that you have to have that kind of thought process in your business use case and make sure that you respect some of those things, because you don't want this to turn into a, you know, a bad experiment, we'll call it. So I just thought I would point that out, that everything that you do, you might want to think about from a responsibility and a content safety standpoint as well. And Microsoft is putting a lot of technology in place to be able to do that. So, you know, a little bit less about, you know, the theory and more into how could this actually work, right? So it starts out with a tool that Microsoft has put out there. It's something that is not quite 100% freely available. You actually do have to sign a form to start kind of being allowed into this situation. You actually do need also a Microsoft Azure account. So, but if you have those two things, if you have an Azure subscription or account and you filled out the form, you get granted access into Azure AI Studio. And AI Studio is one of the starting points that you can actually have to start to start creating the resources that you need to make the solution. And I did just see the question. Yeah, sorry, I thought I actually had the link in here. I'll send the link in the chat as soon as I get done with the full talk. Or someone already has it, so great. But yeah, so you start with Azure AI Studio, and it gives you kind of a playground that you can either just use a raw deployment of one of the models that's already trained and ready for you, or you can kind of make your own and you can fine tune it, or you can use something else to actually combine one of the pre-built deployments of models with maybe your own data. And that last use case is what I'm going to kind of show today. But this is the place that you start, and it's available at oai.azure.com as well. And I'll show that in a second. But this is the key slide, and I'm really happy that in the chat earlier I saw RAG as an acronym, and the question came up. So someone in the audience at least knows about this. That's really great to hear, because I've shown other people this and they've looked at me like they had no idea what I was talking about. Thanks, Ted. Glad you see it. So this is RAG, or Retrieval-Augmented Generation. This is the concept that allows us to take our own data, or at least more up-to-date data, recent data, and kind of marry it with what a large language model has its own training data set on. And it's a pattern that actually came about probably at the beginning of this year. Not quite the very, very beginning of AI, but I would say like January's timeframe is when I first started hearing about this. And this is one of the better slides that I've seen kind of describe it, at least in one slide. The idea is that if you start from the top right and you think about prompting an assistant or prompting ChatGPT, that prompt starts and instead of actually just directly going and asking the question to the model, the retrieval-augmented generation flow is that it turns that prompt into a query that you can pass into a search engine. And whether that's Bing or Azure AI Search or it's your own search engine, the idea is that you're going to kind of take that and you're going to try to find semantically close results using multiple factors in multiple ways with a different data set, maybe your own or something that's up to date and recent, and then bring that back into the knowledge that the model has to kind of finalize and output your query. So it's what I'm saying. It's kind of, it like marries the two together. But instead of just directly answering only off of whatever it has, you're passing it to a search container or a search index, and you're going through the left side of the chart. You're looking at your own documentation, whether that's a set of PDFs, it's a SQL database, Cosmos DB, CSV files, Excel. Almost anything can be actually extracted and put into a search index. And then it uses semantic meaning and semantic ranking to find information in those things and add that into the response. And I'm going to show you actually how to do that next, but from a theory of and kind of high level architecture standpoint, pretty much this is kind of how it works. Hoping that kind of makes sense. I see a couple shaking heads, so that's good. All right. And if you do want to try this out right after this call, you could do it. There's actually a free GitHub resource that's like a accelerator or starter kit, and it allows you to kind of have a code implementation that stitches all of the resources together and gives you that UI that I started with, that chat interface at a running URL. And it's a one button click deployment that, as long as you have kind of the access to the various things and you've set up your search indexes in a couple other places, it actually allows you to just start. And that's actually what I used for this demo today. Kind of have it up and running, but it's basically the chat GPT accelerator with Azure OpenAI. So the way that works is to give you some code that runs in the app service on the top part of the screen. It connects to our AI resources. It connects to the database that you need to behind the scenes to store like the conversation history when needed. And it actually can be secure. As I mentioned, responsibility, data security, the security of who uses it is a big part of how Microsoft wants to implement AI. So Microsoft Entra is, maybe you can think of it as like your Windows credentials to your business accounts at your organization, right? If you're using Microsoft Windows, which a lot of you probably are, it's the same password that you have. So you can actually deploy this solution and have it secured to just people inside of your company. Or if you want to make it public, you can, but I wouldn't recommend that, because this is meant to be like a playground, a way to test out information, a way to practice this. It's not quite the full like production ready sample, right? But it's something you can start off that gets you started really quick. And the way you get that is go to GitHub. It's at this URL, which is github.com/Microsoft/Azure Chat. And it gives you infrastructure scripts, settings, documentation, how to get started. And if you scroll down the rest of the page, you'll see everything you need to do. I followed these steps. It worked in a matter of 25 minutes or less for me, I think, to get everything going. Now I have a little bit of advantage of I already had some of the resources running, but you know, it's my message is it's not hard to get started, especially if you're used to dealing with Microsoft Azure. Okay, so before we get into what's next, let's do a demo. All right, let me go back to this. I'm hoping, can you guys see a browser window with my personal blog on it at this point? All right, fantastic. So that's our scenario today. So scenario is I have a personal blog running at my blog site, mcbeeve.com. I have a lot of blog posts and podcast episodes. All those blog posts have titles, short summaries, full descriptions, you know, all of the content of the blog, things that are related to it. You know, we've got a couple blog posts here. You know, I've got an about page that has some more text about me and all kinds of fun things, all the speaking engagements that I do around the various things. So it's basically a very simple blog site. But the idea is, what if I wanted to present not just a search bar at the top of my blog site, which we've done for years and years and years on websites, right? What if I actually wanted to have an assistant where I could ask questions and answers to find information from just my blog? And imagine this is more of like a enterprise website where you have a lot more content behind the scenes, but just for scenarios right now, you're going to follow me a little bit, right? So I've got my blogs.
You're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody muted me. All right. Apparently it must be going that good. Okay, so what I've done is I have a process that's already ingested all of the HTML content of my blog into an Azure search index. And a lot of CMSs these days have that as like a built-in capability, or it's, like with Kontent.ai, it's a marketplace example that you can download, or not download, but you can clone the repo and you can add it to your solution. And you can basically populate the content out of your CMS, your website, and put it into an Azure search index, or even other search tools like Algolia or whatever. But this one happens to work with Azure Search because, again, we're in the Microsoft world. So I have a search resource provisioned in Azure, and I have an index called all content, which is really all my blog content. And the most important thing about creating a search index for RAG with your AI projects is actually kind of like defining the fields of what's searchable, what isn't. So, I've got kind of a complicated CMS. I've got a lot of fields, but basically where things are checked, I can determine whether that's searched or not, and be able to use that in any way that I call the search index. We could do a whole entire talk about just search and search indexes. I'm not going to do that today. Just trust me. You'll have something that ingests it into search. You'll configure what fields are like the title, the summary, the content, maybe a date, time, and maybe like a URL to where to get the result. All that is kind of standard search stuff. And that's been around for years and years and years, actually. But where things change is that through the Azure AI Studio, you can connect the search index to a model. And to do that, you can use the playground aspect that Azure has. And if you go to chat, this is a test harness, if you will, a pretty advanced test suite that lets you say, I want to play around with AI in my organization. So one of the first things that you would do is actually make a deployment of one of the models. And I have deployed a GPT Turbo model. You could do 3, you could do 4, whatever. There's different models for different use cases. They actually even tell you a little bit about all of their model options and what the best. So for example, like DaVinci is really good for writing code as an output of the result versus 3.5 Turbo or 4 is more kind of what we've seen with ChatGPT. But you have to know a little bit about the models. Generally, if you just want to play around, the first one to start with is GPT Turbo. It's the 3.5 Turbo is like kind of the fastest, cheapest one to start with. And I'll talk about cost a little bit at the end, but not a big factor is the short answer to that. But once you have that deployment out there, you can actually go into the chat playground. And if you want to do nothing else, you just want to see, does it work? You can actually ask a question. So I could say, I don't know, what is the I Am Tech meetup? And it doesn't give me an answer. And that's, again, because this model doesn't have up-to-date information as of, Ilesh, you've been doing this meetup for about, what, 2 years or so?
Yeah, maybe long, yeah.
Yeah, so, but even then, some of these models are only trained up to like 2021 or 20, whatever the date is, I don't remember at this time, but they're not like the most recent things. So that's where you might want to, use your own information and add your own data. So this playground allows you to add your own data, pick a data source, and there's a couple options. The one that I've used the most and is like the most common one is the Azure AI Search. That's the search index that searches my blog content. But you could pick a blob storage container, which maybe you just have a large set of PDF files or CSV or Excel or Word document files. It'll search the contents in there. You can do Cosmos DB if you have a bigger, larger NoSQL type of data set. You can do a new thing, which is upload a file or add URLs. They actually just changed a lot of this stuff last week because of the big Microsoft Ignite announcement. But for today's demo, I'm going to do the AI search. And I have a couple subscriptions. So I've got to get to one that actually has a search service. This is the demo that I just showed you earlier. And inside of that, I pick all content, right? That is the place in my resource that has the indexed content. And I do acknowledge that there's some pricing, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to click next. And now it's saying I need to map. Okay, you have data in your index, but how does the chat assistant know what's the title or where's the URL to point people to? So you would pick from your index a couple places you'd want to have searched for answers. So I'm going to pick summary just to keep it simple. I'm searching that summary of all the blog posts. And this next place isn't going to matter because I don't actually have files. But I do want the document name because that's the title of my blog post to be what is referenced. And then this doesn't even matter either because I'm not actually going to return anything. But basically, you map the setup of what you're doing, and you tell it that I am actually going to do a keyword search because that's the only option in this playground. And then you verify your settings and you save and close. So now that I have my data configured and kind of tied to this playground, I can actually say, something like that's a question on my blog, like what is Kontent.ai? So now I've got an answer. I mean, obviously I asked it a different question, but basically this chat assistant is now grounded to my blog post information. And it's using that as a preference over just the standard general LLM data that it has. So it actually even gives me a full sentence, talks about how Kontent.ai is a company that offers headless CMS. We talked about the podcast that I run called Content Rocks, and I've done some interviews, and it tells me where it got those pieces of information from, which is really important, I think, and really different than what you would maybe just get with ChatGPT. I really like how the reference or the citations are added in, because this is the part where you can actually lead your users to the right spot in your website or the right spot inside of your intranet or whatever the data is coming from. So it's pulling this concept or this answer out of my own blog posts, right? That's pretty cool, because if I just generally ask ChatGPT what Kontent.ai is, it may pull some information from like the marketing website, but it's not going to pull my specific information of things I talked about. Like I attended and spoke at Content Horizons with Martin and Ilesh last year. It's cool to see that it's kind of a very personalized answer to me. You can even do like, who is McBeeve? And that hopefully is going to, I actually haven't done this one. Oh, great. And actually the reason for that, I can tell you, it doesn't know the answer because I only indexed my blog posts, not the entire website. So, yeah, so there was a question about specifically, starting or stopping information or answers. That is around the system message. So you can give, this is where you get into prompt engineering a little bit, but the system message is kind of the important starting point for any other context or background information you have that you want to also add into the initial user's query. So you can kind of just write like, I'm a Kontent.ai MVP, I work at BizSteam, I have a personal blog. You can put all that stuff into here. And actually I do that in my standard ChatGPT subscription. You give it some context around who you are and what you are most likely trying to accomplish, and it will definitely shape the answers a lot different. And if you want other examples of what the system message can do, you actually have a couple just use cases that maybe you're a support agent versus a marketing writing assistant versus a IRS tax solution. So when you start adding and updating the system message to tell it, I'm very creative and things like that, let's kind of clear the solution now, and let's see how it answers what is Kontent.ai. I haven't done this before, so we're kind of doing it live. Yeah, it looks like it's mostly the same. So maybe that's not enough of a system prompt to completely change this specific response to this question. But as you massage the system message and as you change the input and change what it's searching, that will definitely impact the accuracy and the way that the answers are written to you. So it literally is a playground. It's a great way to kind of get started quickly to use something. And then from there, once you have it to a certain spot that you like, you actually have this deploy to button. And this is what would allow it to be more useful in your organization. So I have done the deploy to a web app previous to the call, because it does take like about 10 minutes to spin up everything once you enter in all the parameters. But you can actually create a new app, you give it a name, you tell it where you want to deploy to, and there's a free tier from a pricing plan perspective. But you configure all these things, you say deploy, and that builds this. It actually creates a web application for you that pulls down that GitHub repo that I showed earlier, attaches it to the settings that you set up in the playground with your Azure Search and all the other things, and it gives you the demo site of course, I probably haven't clicked this in a while. Oh, actually, it's coming up fairly fast. Okay, sorry, authentication took a second. But now we actually have a live running URL that could be secured to only people inside your organization. Right now, I don't think I turned on any authentication, so it's probably wide open. It may actually just work. And instead of being inside of the playground, you have an assistant that you could embed in your applications, in your daily work, and it's getting that solution that we just did the playground for. So that's the kind of the quick demo. Does it make sense? I'm seeing a couple of shaking heads, but I thought it was pretty cool to be able to go from almost nothing in probably less than a total hour to be able to use your own data in an assistant like that. So, all right. Based off time, I'm going to jump back to just my last couple remaining slides. Hopefully this works. All right. So what's next after this? Microsoft is dumping a ton of resources into these solutions. In fact, the latest Microsoft Ignite was last week. They've added even more. We've heard a little bit about copilots, and I think Michael's going to talk more about that from what I can understand so far. Those copilots are coming. There's going to be copilots everywhere. Teams, Excel, Power BI, CRM, everything, Windows. It's going to have a copilot in it. They're investing heavily in that. They're creating tools for developers like us to make copilots. That's where just the pure AI Studio, Azure AI Studio comes in. They just launched this tool. You can hit this, and you can start looking at not just showing the things I showed you from a building assistant standpoint. You can look at using like Power Virtual Assistants. You can build your own copilots in the future. Nothing is completely ready for just anyone to join from a copilot standpoint. Unless you're in an enterprise organization and you have more than 300 seats, that's the only way you can get like Teams Copilot right now. Not even me as an MVP, I can't get it yet. So it's going to be a while before it's generally publicly available, but it is coming. I can promise you that. And they're investing more and more and more into this, especially if you're following the news from this weekend. Holy crap. They basically just brought the CEO into Microsoft. It's a crazy world that we live in when it comes to all this AI stuff. But really, that's kind of what I had. I hope I didn't run too much over on time, Ilesh, but if you're curious and you want to know more about this stuff, you can definitely reach out to me at my blog. You can hit me up on X/Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn quite a bit too. So that's what I had for you all today.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Really good. Do you have any questions for Brian? I know there's one there that says, "Is LangChain worth the effort?" But I think that was there.
Is LangChain worth the effort?
That's
a great question.
Sort of. I'm only asked. Sorry for the interruption. I'm only asking because I've just spent the last couple of months working on exactly what you just demonstrated, but doing it in LangChain. So, just curious if you've experimented with.
I will be honest and opinionated at the same time. I am not an expert in LangChain or blockchain. It's just not like my world at all. I believe it's overkill. I think that with the getting started stuff that Microsoft has, the playgrounds, there's actually even something called semantic kernel, which is a SDK that you can actually really easily use to write some code that calls these services and put it into your own app and integrate with your own tools. I would just look at some of the newer things that they have, because to me, the LangChain option, it feels overcomplicated for how easy Microsoft is trying to make all this stuff. But again, I'm not the expert in it. I could be totally wrong.
There's probably degrees of what you're trying to achieve as to what level of fine-grained control that you need. Again, I touched on this a little bit in my talk, but from Copilot Studio through to the Azure AI Studio through to kind of doing it all yourself, that's where LangChain semantic kernel come in at the kind of the extreme pro code end of the spectrum, whereas you've got Copilot and a little bit of the Azure AI Studio at maybe the low no code level. So it kind of depends what you need to do, and if you need to do it might be that you need to be using LangChain or semantic kernel to get that natural language prompt to manipulate, to then go and query to SQL yourself. Maybe you need to manipulate it, then you get that back, and then you go and pass it through something else, and you get that back and you pass it through something else, and then you want to regenerate in a natural language response all of that work that you've just kind of pieced together. Some of that you can do in the Azure AI Studio that we just saw from Brian, but you might find that you hit some limits there for what you're doing.
Thanks. No, I think that's just a matter of time though before Microsoft just dominates in that area. It's a no-brainer at this point.
Shabari, do you have a question?
Yes, Ilesh, thank you. I do. Brian, thank you for that piece. It was really good. We're trying to do something similar as well in our organization. And what I wanted to ask is, we've done that bit where you connect like different data sources and stuff, but what we haven't got to is like persisting chat. So let's say like a group of whatever, like within the organization, let's say we're a 50 people organization, we everybody's chatting. How easy is it to like persist a conversation and for that conversation to be made available to the organization itself, like that kind of like for training and stuff?
Maintaining state in the history of the chat, that's definitely the whole semantic kernel and Cosmos DB type of solution. There's interfaces and APIs to do that on top of your solution, but it does depend a little bit on how you built your solution to begin with. But I would check out the documentation around storing chat history with semantic kernel.
Perfect, thank you.
Great questions. So I guess like just follow up to the stuff that you've shown, especially with the results that come back. Sometimes you could have a situation where, in this example, you had what is Kontent.ai, and it came back with 5 results. But say in those scenarios that some of it is quite sensitive, like one of those was actually a sensitive article or something from your list. Are there ways to kind of limit what can be shown from 5 rather than 5 show 3 because 1 is not allowed? And is that quite easy to do and stuff?
Yeah, there's multiple ways to handle that. Number one, there is a configuration in the chat playground to say, only look at between, I think it's like between 3 and 10 total citations to consider in the response. So that's just like a setting in the chat playground. Then there's also the aspect of you don't have to index and search everything. You could actually control what gets put into the search index with security trimming and things like that of like, hey, if this is private secure only content, don't add it into the index. So it would never be considered. The other thing you could do is use prompt engineering to kind of structure that system prompt or other further prompts and say, if the answer involves these subjects, please don't consider them and don't respond with them to the user. So like, there's multiple layers of being able to do that. And if it truly is sensitive, I mean, I probably wouldn't even put it in the search index to begin with, or put it in the place that's searched for the LLM to even consider.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that makes sense because obviously I'm just thinking the result that you had was your blog in the sense that data is, imagine like a site that's got, so many more pages that might be curated by different teams that you don't know what that sensitive thing is until someone's actually searched for it, because it just becomes in there. But no, that makes sense. Roger?
Yeah, thanks for the talk. It's really interesting. So in the RAG slide you showed us earlier, you were saying the system as it is has the ability to go out and make search queries and incorporate that data. I'm wondering if you know if the kind of the corollary to that is on the roadmap, where you'd have the system be able to trigger outward bound things like make API calls or push data somewhere. Have you heard anything about that coming?
Yeah, there's definitely ways to kind of ingest API data into an index. There's other ways to even have the OpenAI resource not even use the search index and use, like I had a drop down, there was like a web URL, an upload of a file, a blob storage container. Because it's Microsoft, they want you to use some Microsoft Azure resource to, you know, have their consumption run. But there are ways for, even in search, to use what are called custom skill sets. So to do things that have been in AI for a while, like entity recognition, keyword extraction, automatic tagging of information, you can actually put that in your pipeline, whether that's the search pipeline and the indexing and how it indexes, or the sort of prompt flow of where things are going. But yeah, there's a machine learning studio as well that allows you to kind of build some of the prompt engineering, where you actually get Python steps that represent each part of the flow. And if you want to add your own step to call an API at this point, you can actually do that. I think one of the actual Microsoft examples shows, like, in the prompt flow, you add a step that calls out to like a weather API to get the most recent weather information, to add that into part of the response. And you can actually click edit. You can see the raw Python code at that moment, that step, and you can actually write your own or change it. So yeah, I mean, there are tools to do almost all of the things you just mentioned, Roger.
Brilliant, thank you.
Great, yeah, thank you. Any other questions? You can always hit Brian up. He's obviously happy to help out with other questions if needed. So finally, we've got Michael. Thanks, Brian. Michael, just let us know when you're ready. Going to see lots of Microsoft stuff, right? Some
there
cool
should
stuff.
be just a few little bits of Microsoft stuff, yeah. Cool. Well, it's great to be here. It's been really, really good conversations, questions, and presentations so far. And I'm looking forward to kind of wrapping this up, hopefully tying in some of the other things that we've already seen and discussed today. I'm going to take a slightly different angle from what we've seen so far, and I think it complements actually what is being shared already. I'm actually, within Microsoft, I'm a partner technology manager on the ISV side of the partner organization, ISV being our independent software vendors. And actually working with those partners, it's really interesting to see some of the things that they are thinking about, and actually the opportunity that AI presents in a way that is a little different than just how we can use it to gather insights and stuff, but actually how might it fundamentally change the way we think about interacting with software. And actually we've seen a little bit of that already. So the point of this presentation is actually thinking about, well, what if we don't have a UI? Is that a problem? Probably not. Actually, AI can simplify our lives by having it simple. So the first thing I want to think about actually are things called desire paths. Some of you may be aware of desire paths. You've probably all seen them, even if you don't know what their name is. But if you think of a park, there's a lovely paved walkway. It's got lampposts and benches, and someone's given a lot of time and attention to that path. And then next to it, going off in a direction, is a little muddy footpath. The muddy footpath is actually where a large number of people really want to go in the park. That's where they're actually desiring to go. That is a desire path. And it's interesting because there are desire paths all over the place. And actually, for me, AI is a fantastic digital desire path. And I'll explain why I'm thinking that in just a moment. So when we think about work and what it is that we're doing. We're going to be creating something. We're going to be finding something. We'll analyze it. We'll gain insights. We'll write documents. We'll send emails. We're busy in applications doing things. Each of those applications, they are powerful tools with lots of powerful features and functionality that we need in order to do the job that we're trying to do, to get the output that we want. And that complexity and the power of those tools leads to some complexity. If you think about the ribbon UI, it's quite an elegant UI for the amount of functionality that it is providing. But you have to learn it, right? And this is second nature to us, but there's plenty of software out there that is, maybe if we were to go and use it, it would take a bit of time. Photoshop for me is not one that I get on very well with it. I know it's extremely powerful. I know amazing things can be done with Photoshop. I struggle to make anything look good in Photoshop, and I wish I was better at it. But actually, what I wanted, if I was to use Photoshop in that scenario, but in general, right, is to take what's in our minds and share it, put it, visualize it, create a PowerPoint presentation. It doesn't have to be PowerPoint, right? But we want to convey a story, we want to convey some insights. We want to be able to share that. We want to be able to make progress with what we're understanding. Someone keeps taking control. Please don't do that. We want to be able to share that. What we don't want to be doing is actually spending most of our time creating that. Writing emails, writing Word documents, creating PowerPoints, working through spreadsheets in Excel is not really our jobs. It's not really what we're paid to do. It's what we spend most of the time doing, unfortunately, perhaps. But what we're there to do is understand and use our brain, right, to come up with insightful things. And that to me is where AI becomes extremely powerful. And maybe some of the complexity that we have in our software disappears a little bit over time. And I think that's why Satcher's made the point, and he made this last week at Ignite. And if you've watched Ignite, there was an awful lot of stuff around copilots. And from Satcher's perspective, and it makes absolute sense why Microsoft is all in on this, which is copilots will be the new UI. That idea of having a chat experience with the knowledge on the internet, with knowledge within our organizations, with understanding the intent that we have, that is the UI that we can expect going forwards. And it's going to be the agent that actually helps us achieve what we're trying to do. I mean, please stop taking control. So the thing that came out about a year ago, ChatGPT, the most popular rise to 100 million users ever, right? Took such a short amount of time to reach 100 million users. The UI of that is one of the most simple UIs you can get in such a popular thing. Right? It's just a text box or a microphone icon for us to interact with and get this powerful experience back. The UX there is obviously a chat experience, not a new one. The innovation here isn't with the UI and the interface and the experience, but it's the technology now is so powerful, the tool itself doesn't need that complexity in the interface. And at Microsoft, we're thinking of, well, how can we do more even with that? So that's where the Microsoft 365 Copilot comes in, and I'm dwelling on this. It is slightly different from some of the other Copilots. It's slightly different from the Microsoft Copilot that you can access today. It is the new single Copilot experience. If you go to copilot.microsoft.com, you get access to GPT-4 for free. But the Microsoft 365 Copilot does things a little differently. It's using the large language models that we have heard lots about and know about. It is grounding it in the Microsoft Graph, which, if you don't know what that is all of the documents, PowerPoint presentations, spreadsheets, Teams meetings, events, chats, org structures. All of this is what comprises the Microsoft Graph and is contained within your organization's tenant and boundary. It then exposes this chat experience within the Microsoft 365 apps, and it has access to the internet. Now, what makes this hugely powerful is that grounding of the Microsoft Graph data, as we saw already in Brian's talk, like how powerful it is to ground these models with really relevant, really useful data, actually offers this really, really powerful experience, which is unlocked through a chatbot. Which, if you think about the Office software, as I said, the Ribbon, hugely well-known, complicated but elegant solution to making all of that functionality available. We can access it all with just a chat box. I'm going to play a video. Let me know immediately if the sound's not working. I think that's just an incredible example of how just using that chat interface, so much can be achieved. I don't know how long that would have taken me to have done that kind of stuff in and out of File Explorer, in and out of the Office apps, in and out of Outlook and Teams to get the right information from the right people. And this is the power of M365 Copilot, right? And it will, not only does it exist in that one chat experience within Teams, you can access the power of this Copilot in the different Office applications as well, which gives you a slightly more bespoke experience around that type of experience. So if you're trying to draft Word documents, it will be focused on that. If you wanted to create PowerPoint presentations, you can get it to do different layouts and add different slides and stuff. But I mean, this stuff is just hugely powerful. I do have access to this, and it is, as the video shows, it is really impressive tech. I see there's a request for the video. Yeah, I'll find where this is shared online and share the link later. This was some of these things were kind of shown off last week at Ignite, so this is all pretty new and pretty exciting. Now, I'm aware that some of you maybe don't do too much stuff actually in the Office suite. Maybe you're more of a developer spending your time closer to the code and to data. And this example was actually very text heavy. So I want to show you another one where, again, we can use just a chat box, but actually end up with a very visual output. So the next demo is using Power BI to generate dashboards and reports, again, just using a text box. So I think it's, again, another really powerful example. And actually, going back to the point I'm making, that Power BI is a very powerful piece of software, right? For those of you who know it, you can do an awful lot of stuff with it. And there's quite a complex menu structure to it. There's lots and lots of options and configurations available. With this, you don't have to touch any of that. You don't have to learn how to use Power BI. Rather, you know what you're trying to get out of the data and the questions that you want answered. And that's all you need. You can just use Copilot to give you that representation and to give you the options available to you to get that information and insight out. So hugely efficient from a time perspective, but actually really democratizing as well, to actually enable everyone to have access to this. I assume, Ted, your comment about no need to hire expensive data scientists, I assume that's a bit tongue-in-cheek. I would argue that in order for an organization to be able to do this well, they've probably got a good data science team making sure that the data estate of a company is well managed and looked after. But maybe everyone's free to create the Power BI reports that they need rather than it getting on a backlog for someone else to go and produce. So I mentioned that probably some of you are also closer to code. So I also want to touch on GitHub Copilot. Now, this has been out a little while, so this isn't completely new, but the fact that it's been out a while, it's actually allowing us to see some of the impact that this is having. It's not just cool and impressive tech. It genuinely is helping people write better code and be faster when working with it. It's also allowing people to focus more on the satisfying work, which is actually really impactful, really important to that well-being piece and keeping motivated and engaged in what it is that we're doing. But with that, we have announced some new features, which actually further the idea that I'm trying to convey here around the changing of expectations around the way that we're going to access this powerful technology and the way that the UI might be changing. This one doesn't even have a chat box for some of it. It's just in line with the code. So again, really, really impressive demo of what Copilot can do, but actually the different ways in which we can interact with Copilot, whether it's adding comments, whether it's through the GitHub Copilot chat, or then that little inline prompt as well. So some really different types of UI for such powerful technology. I can see a few questions about videos and stuff for this. I will find videos online for these as well. GitHub Copilot is available today. I would go check it out within your organizations if you aren't already. Check it out yourself if you want to. It really is really powerful. And again, one that I can really vouch for. And then just looking back at the Microsoft Copilot, we have over the past few months been rolling this out with some large corporations, and we're seeing similar impact to that of GitHub Copilot. So it's not just about this being cool new tech and it's a bit of fun, but ultimately it's a gimmick. It's not. This is really, really powerful, really, really transformative. On average, 1.2 hours are being saved a week by people. That is a decent amount of time to focus on the job rather than doing the tasks around the job. And that is allowing people to feel more satisfied with the work that they're doing. So where does that leave us? Well, actually, the more that co-pilots are used, the more that they roll out, the more that people enjoy working with them and see the value, have all of this time saved, and all of the opportunities that they unlock, it's actually changing people's expectations of how they can work with software, how they use devices and computers, right? And a lot of that is going to be around the UI. All of this is around a text box. So our most powerful software that we all create and design, we need to be thinking around how our expectations going to be changing of how people will be interacting with that. How is it that the Office suite of applications, some of the most widely used and known interfaces, can consolidate all of that down to a text box? And if we're not thinking about how we can do similar in our own software, someone else may well be thinking that. And that isn't to say that we shouldn't have the UI for our products. There will always be a degree of needing to go in and fine-tune things, but perhaps as the default to give us that first draft, use the Copilot as it's meant to be, that aid to us, not to be the thing that does it completely, then maybe that first draft, people will look to a text box to get them started. And then they'll use the controls themselves, those complex menus, for those that have learned the software to really fine tune what they're trying to do. So if that's the case, you might then be wondering, well, how do we do this, right? So the next few slides, I want to just share some of the things that we are seeing and what it is that we are offering in order to make this happen. So we are seeing the paradigm shift. It's not just with the UI, but the ability to use that natural language interaction is what is making these applications and experiences feel more intelligent. They're more data-driven and personalized than we've seen before. And actually, new features are delivered quicker than we've seen. I mean, we just think of how this year has gone. ChatGPT is just a year old, and just think about how much has happened in this space in such a short time. This technology is really transformative, and it is accelerating what people are experiencing and therefore what they are expecting. So to build our own, we need to bring our apps and our data together. And how we do that, as I mentioned before in one of the answers to a question, we've got options from low code, no code with the Microsoft Copilot Studio through to the pro code, more in-depth, more fine-grained Azure AI Studio. These are available in different previews right now. You can go and read up about them, and they are available to start playing around with, and we absolutely should be, because we need to start having opinions on how we should be taking our experiences and meeting the customer expectations. How do we get ready for this? How do we get our data estate in order to unlock this for our customers? I want to quickly show off that video immediately started playing. I want to just show off the Copilot Studio, which is very low code, so very easy to go and work with. The point of these Copilots and the point of Copilot Studio is to allow your organization to embed your company's information and processes within the Microsoft Copilot experience, so that the Microsoft Copilot can just be a single place for your employees to go to extract any information. Whereas if we want to take something that's a bit more customer facing, a little bit more fine-grained, a little bit more control around how that works, that's where the Azure AI Studio comes in, that allows you to harness the Azure AI services or use machine learning, because it might not be that you need generative AI, it might be that you need some different more traditional machine learning technologies there, all built on top of the Azure AI infrastructure. That infrastructure is what OpenAI exclusively rely on to run all of their models and services. Let's take a quick look at what that offers. So then thinking again about how do we bring this power of the LLMs to the products that we've already got, to the services that we already provide. There are a number of different ways that this could be done. It could be B2C, it could be B2B. We've explored some of this already, so I won't go into it too much now, but there are a range of different ways that we can use this generative AI and offer this chat experience to really ride this new transformational technology to great effect. And the thing that I just want to kind of start rounding off this conversation with is, as important and as impressive as all of this is, we need to be very, very careful with this technology. It's extremely powerful, but we must be thinking about responsible AI throughout. And that at Microsoft, we've got 6 key principles to responsible AI. They are essential to thinking about at the very beginning of the AI conversation within our organizations about how we're going to bring this to customers. Things with such kind of opportunity and such power, it's easy for things to go wrong. So we need to bake it in from the beginning. We need to make sure that our kind of processes, our corporate view of this, how we approach it is right. We need to make sure that when it's actually implemented, that we're using the right tools, we're testing it in the right way, and that we have the oversight needed. Customers will expect that of us, and so we should be doing it. It should not be an afterthought. And a couple of things to just touch on to give the reassurance that Microsoft are approaching this in all of the right ways. We have the Copilot copyright commitment that was announced back in September. For anyone that uses Copilot to generate content, using it in the right way, then there's a commitment there that Microsoft will support and take responsibility for potential legal risks involved here. That is how committed to the Copilot process Microsoft is. But this Ignite extended further to use of the Azure OpenAI service as well. So long as the right best practice is followed, Microsoft commit to helping on copyright claims. So in order to be ready for this, how do we take advantage of it? You can take a look here at what are the right steps involved to get ready for this if we aren't already. And I'm sure many of you are on this journey, but if you're not, I thought it was worth just sharing this because it's more than just the technology involved. There is quite a lot going on. AI governance perhaps being the piece that we really need to be very careful about and spending time on. So if I go back to the desire paths that I started with at the beginning, actually, I wanted a picture that represented desire paths. I didn't need to go and spend a while searching for it. I just asked Microsoft Copilot to generate one for me, and it provided it to me within seconds, much quicker than it would have been otherwise, especially if I had to use Photoshop to do this. My own skills wouldn't have allowed me to do it. I hope this has been a good overview of the power of the technology and actually where customer expectations are going and what we need to be thinking about and how we can deliver this to our customers and in our products. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Really great. Got one question. How far do you think we're from conversation experience similar to what we know from Star Trek? After all, we're already chatting through a chatbot, right? Question for Martin.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting one because that might be more on the artificial general intelligence piece. It depends what we mean by conversation, because you can have a conversation with ChatGPT right now. It's not the same as chatting to a human. It could be really, really articulate and it can use language really, really well, but it's not providing its own insight, right? It's not thinking. And that's a big thing where people are concerned about the rise of AI. LLMs are not the thing to be concerned about. They are just mimicking in an extremely good way everything that we as humans have written and produced. They're fantastic parrots in that way. Really, really powerful, because a lot of what we end up doing is parroting things, but it's not the same as thinking. So do I know how far away we are from that? No, if I knew that, I'd probably be in a different role. But as ever with technology, there are things that we think should happen and they never happen or take far longer than we think. And there are some things we can't even imagine that just kind of turn up in no time at all. I'm sure we still all want flying cars, and here we are impressed by really, really good AI technology that 18 months ago we never thought was on the horizon. So who knows? It could be months away or it could be years away.
Yeah, I know my question was quite loaded, but also maybe asking about whether you guys in Microsoft are thinking about a paradigm change, like how we interact with the computer. You already mentioned that at the very beginning, that today you're doing a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of tasks, and it's shifting to more towards that conversational interface through through the chat box. Do you also guys perceive that we are gonna see rise of more like voice-driven communications, like real speaking to a computer? Hey, computer, generate this for me. Because honestly, when I was using ChatGPT with that voice controls, it's actually quite comfortable today already.
Yeah. There's been some impressive advancements as well with voice to text models, which is has always been a bit of a challenge. Right now with Windows or Microsoft 365, Microsoft Copilot in Windows, the name right. What's really good about that is actually it speaks to the same topic. If you kind of say that you wanted to spend some time focused on something, it can do a range of things for you. It could enable dark mode. It could suppress notifications, and maybe it sets a Spotify playlist of focus music. So it's beginning to kind of orchestrate a few things on your behalf. It's what you've asked it to do. It's not doing it without your kind of say so, but you don't need to know where in settings to do all of that or which applications to open and whatever. It's understanding what you're trying to do, understanding what the platform provides and bringing the two things together. And this is where building your own copilots and having them within Microsoft Copilot becomes really, really valuable, because Microsoft Copilot can go and do the same thing as well. So it's possible to surface information from within your organization in that Microsoft Copilot experience. So I can, for example, go and say, how much annual leave do I have? And if it can't get it from the intranet, which Microsoft 365 Copilot can, because it have access to SharePoint, but if it couldn't and it was in some HR system, someone could have built internally a Copilot that would interact with the HR system to get out how much annual leave is remaining. Or the balance, not my particular one, but maybe what's available in the UK for annual leave or whatever. Then we have this ability to not have to go into all of these experiences, going in and out of different websites, going in and out of different internet portals, different apps. Actually, that Copilot becomes a single place to go for a lot of information. It is arguably why Bing is doing very well at the minute as well, right? Like, search can be a difficult thing. It's really, really powerful, but by having Bing chat there, as is now branded Microsoft Copilot, it can surface the actual answer that we were looking for right there and then. There's been some great examples of, this is my car, will this IKEA furniture flat pack fit in my car? Now I go and search those different bits and figure it out myself, or I just ask Copilot and it figures it out for me. So it's kind of us getting into the answer much quicker, which is only, we're going to see more and more of that. And the answer might not just be text, it might be, as I say, Spotify playlist and dark mode being enabled.
Great. I've got a question. So the GitHub Copilot stuff looked really powerful, and especially the new things that are coming in. I've used like combinations, especially when developing with Visual Studio Code and things like that, with Cody, which actually does a code smells, or what does this code mean? But then you have to use a combination of other stuff because it doesn't do everything that you want it to do. So, you know, it's great to have that sort of platform where it's going to combine everything that you would need to keep, and also suggestions and things like that. Similar to data, how we would normally have it, where we would want to try and keep it within, you know, your own sort of organizational stuff. Do you know if GitHub Copilot kind of works in a way where you've got, say, multiple projects? It's obviously going to learn your coding, learn the way that, you know, you're writing that code, or for specific projects. Is it something that would be shared to other projects within your organization, or is it just project specific in sense of data that it's learning? If that makes sense.
It makes sense. I don't know how far the boundary is. Yes, it's definitely, there's that tenant piece going on. I don't know how bound it is by the individual project. I'm not sure on that one.
Okay, no, that's good to something to find out for us. Does anybody else have any questions for Michael? I know a few people have dropped off because it's getting a bit late for them, but if not, really want to thank, Roger, go for it, please.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just wondering, what would you say to clients who are very reluctant to admit AI into their organization because they have very strong policies against code leaving their organization, you know, things being shared with chat AI? I mean, I think the safety guards are there, but is there what kind of how would you set about persuading someone who's very negative and scared of this that it's safe to give their code to? I'm thinking specifically Copilot. I miss using Copilot because my current contract won't allow it. No,
it's an interesting one, and companies, rightly so, want to be safe in the knowledge that their data isn't about to leave where it's meant to be. The the point is that this is all running on Azure. So if they're familiar with Azure, if they're Azure customers and already trust those processes, the AI side of things isn't different. It's all the same. I'm
afraid they're on-prem the whole way at the moment.
Okay. It's an interesting one. The conversation of the cloud, if they're still on-prem, the conversation of the cloud is probably one that needs to happen sooner than the conversation of AI, because yes, there could be some things that they would immediately gain benefit from AI, but they would gain probably more benefit from approaching things in the cloud. And certainly, yeah, things like these co-pilots, they can run wherever their infrastructure is running. If they're reluctant to approach the cloud, I can see some reluctance to using Copilot because of what it comes with. If they ever were to consider how they could embed AI into their own products, they're going to need to be in the cloud for some of that, if not all of it. Because you think of Fabric, the new end-to-end data platform that became generally available last week. That is brilliant for AI opportunities, but you need your data in it, and that runs in the cloud.
Yes,
So,
I mean, there are moves afoot there, but they're moves into AWS, and it sounds like Microsoft is running away with it here, doesn't it?
I mean, yes, Microsoft is the way that they should be looking. But if they want to be doing AI stuff, I mean, if they want to be doing anything, they should be looking at Azure, but especially if they're looking at AI stuff, then they need to seriously be looking at Azure, because this is where everything's happening.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for your advice. And yeah, thanks for the talk.
Good luck.
Cheers.
That's great. So I think we're done with the questions. Thank you so much for everyone that attended and the speakers out at the event, and all the questions are like great conversations and things like that as well. So thank you everyone, and share the recording out hopefully later on tonight, which will be on LinkedIn and on Twitter/X. So yeah, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.